Well, welcome everyone. A great welcome to superintendents, to principals, to instructional coordinators, to classroom teachers, and to technology coordinators, and particularly to teacher librarians. Welcome to this brief webinar. I am David Loertscher, a professor in the School of Information at San Jose State University in California. And I'm joined tonight by some brilliant graduate students from our instructional design class. And this is our culminating activity for a semester's long work together. So we are going to let's see, let me get started here. Okay, so Fran Comper, who is a really great person, she was conducting some workshops in Connecticut with the superintendents and various districts who were transforming their libraries into library learning commons. And she got this question from superintendents, what is exactly the difference that teacher librarians make to teaching and learning in the school? What should we expect as administrators for what they are actually contributing? And that, of course, was, we thought about that for a while. We kind of reframed that question to say, if you have a classroom teacher who is willing and you merge the classroom learning experience into the library learning commons so that they're one entity, and you overlap the rich information environment of the learning commons and all the tech tools that are there, and then you add this second person to the learning experience who is a second professional known as the teacher librarian, what do you get? What happens? And so Fran and I got busy and we created what we call the light model. And if you see it on the screen, and probably can't read a lot of it, but down to the bottom it says 6 reasons why any classroom teacher would want to hire a teacher librarian to partner with on a learning experience. And the bottom row, from left to right, shows kind of typical things that more traditional kinds of things that a librarian might do. But the top row introduces 6 different major cutting-edge kinds of things that superintendents, principals, and classroom teachers could expect out of the moving their learning experience to the learning commons. So Fran created this, and you probably can't read this, but you will get the sense that she was trying to build side by side the idea that in the traditional library, this might happen, but in the learning commons, new expectations happen, and all kinds of new experiences can contribute to teaching and learning. So let's just go through the 6 main ways, why we called it the light model, that are on that poster that we showed you. And so, of course, the L in light is for literacy, and by that we mean not just reading, but also a number of other literacies, such as digital citizenship and media literacy, and a number of others that have been identified. The first I stands for information, and we mean by that not only printed or digital information, but the whole range of multimedia information that's out there, both on the web and what we own and actually have access to physically. The next I stands for inquiry and discovery, where the children or teens are investigating, critically thinking about a lot of things, problem solving, doing projects, all of that sorts of things. The next I is for instructional designs, where we kind of throw away the old bird unit, where a kid might pick a bird, find out a little bit of information about that bird, and then present that orally to the class. So we're looking for much deeper designs that boost major learning. The T, of course, is for technology, and by this, we don't just mean hooking them up and turning it on. We're interested in all sorts of major tools that actually boost learning. And finally, the E stands for experience, expertise that a second professional might bring to the classroom, since most teacher librarians across the U.S. and Canada have been actual classroom teachers. So I'd like to introduce to you Katie Hanna, who is going to ask our students here to give some examples of each one of the steps of the LIGHT model. Over to you, Katie.
Hello, everyone. Okay, so starting with L, we're going to start with literacy and the cutting edge. Literacy builds skills and enjoyment, including wide reading, digital production, and citizenship across many types of media and information formats and devices. Our first example is coming from Amanda Rood, if she would like to take the mic.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Dr. L. Good evening, everyone. Of course, we all understand that literacy isn't just being able to read or enjoying books anymore. It's a whole slew of things. So as recently as November 2016, research has shown that as many as 80% of students cannot differentiate between real and fake news, particularly when it is shared on social media, and we all know how they need their social media. When considering how prevalent social media is in the lives of our students, it's absolutely imperative that the students we teach have the necessary skills of a digital citizen to be able to spot, baloney when they encounter it. It is with the guidance of the teacher librarian that students will learn that before they trust, share, or use a social media news story, it is absolutely crucial that they evaluate its credibility. And these were the reasons that our group designed a closed reading learning experience where we asked the students to examine their own thinking as well as their ability to identify untrustworthy information. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Moving on, I for information. Information in the cutting edge helps learners take command of connecting to high-quality print and digital resources across the global network. And we are going to be hearing from Audrey Kelly first. She would please take the mic.
Hi, yes. When co-teaching, we as teacher librarians have a very strong emphasis on specific academic habits for things like note-taking techniques, including visualizing the text and linking the text to self, and practice summarizing the piece, and approaching reading and research with a purpose in mind often helps students make sense of the reasons behind using certain sources, whether print or visual or audio or any source, but that using specific sources for different types of information is expected and is important for them to learn. And the teacher librarian takes that step further with the classroom teacher.
Wonderful, thank you. And we have one more example here from Kira Koop.
Hi, I'm Kira. Everybody is partial to the information or privy to the information that the ability to synthesize data is an essential skill no matter which career path you pursue. So when we as teacher librarians create plans for a learning experience, as we did this semester, I and my partner created a lesson plan connecting art and a grade 9 science class. We collected resources and examples of similar projects for students to gather inspiration from. and those included art pieces that were inspired by science and science pieces that used art to communicate their findings. By connecting learners to information resources, whether they are print or digital or global or local, we can promote and encourage generations of people who are able to access quality information and use it in their own work. Exposure to reliable sources helps to reinforce critical thinking skills and information literacy. Thank you.
Wonderful, Kira. Thank you so much. Moving on, I for inquiry. Inquiry and discovery, cutting edge. Co-teachers inquiry projects from the beginning to end facilitate self-directed learning, making, and creativity. And our first example is from Kelly Mahoney. If she would please take the mic.
Actually, I think it's supposed to be me, isn't it, Rebecca?
Yes,
yeah.
Rebecca should be that.
Yes, okay. Rebecca, I am so sorry.
That's all right. Okay, so I'm Rebecca Schlater. Good evening. I wanted to talk about a co-taught research unit that I did with an 8th grade English teacher for our middle school. Our middle school students engaged in an e-tour of the Holocaust. They listened to oral histories, looked at photos, watched primary source videos, and read through museum websites. The variety of rich texts that we collected provided various entry points to the content so that all types of learners, from struggling readers and English learners to honor students, could access the information and develop the background knowledge they needed to start generating their own research questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to move on and we'll hear from Kelly in just a moment. I for instructional design. Instructional design is cutting edge. Co-design engaging learning experiences that combine content knowledge and learning how to learn skills. And Kelly is our first example for this one. Sorry about that.
No problem. So this is Kelly Mahoney, and a group of us this semester worked together on creating a unit on immigration. And unlike a traditional research unit where students might be trying to answer questions that are posed by their teachers, the students in our unit would engage in inquiry through creating their own questions. And those would be done through a series of activities facilitated by both the teacher and the librarian working together. The idea being that the teacher is an expert in the content knowledge while the librarian is an expert in inquiry activities. And this experience assures us that while students are gaining content knowledge, they're also gaining skills in learning how to explore a new topic.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And moving on, Jeanette Martin has one more example in the instructional design cutting edge area. Jeanette?
Hi, thanks, Katie. My name is Jeanette Martin. I am a library media assistant in Anaheim, California. And I started out by asking a teacher if she wanted to collaborate with me. She had never had a librarian before. So she said, yes, what would we do? And I go, well, what would you like to teach the kids? And she said, India, STEM, and slam poetry. And I was like, okay. So what I then did, as Dr. L always says, 2 heads are better than 1, I collaborated with a fellow classmate, Mary Fobb Guillory, who created an amazing Knowledge Building Center collaborative website. And it incorporated everything the teacher had asked for. After reviewing the KDC with the teacher, we developed a timeline and dates on when we were to work with these kids. After reviewing the water crisis in the world, specifically with India, we asked the students to come up with their own filtration system that could be used to supply clean water to India. We provided all of the material and they had to figure out how to do it. They then assessed their learning by coming up with slam poetry to describe the world water crisis. The kids had so much fun. The administrators were knocked out of this world that I've now been asked to work on this project with the remaining 6th grade teachers. So we've been having a blast. Thank you so much for your time, for having me.
Thank you, Jeanette. Moving on, T for technology. The technology boosts in the cutting edge. Technology co-designs engaging learning experiences that combine content knowledge and learning how-to skills. And our first example for this evening is Anthony Devine. Anthony, would you please take the mic?
Sure. Hi, everybody. The project I've been working on has to do with getting a high school to implement digital portfolios school-wide. The thinking behind that is that scores on tests and grades in classes only tell part of a student's learning story, and too often scores and grades that come from teachers send the message that the learning belongs to the teacher, to the evaluators. But learning is personal. It belongs to the students, and we should treat it that way. Students should be encouraged to take ownership of their learning by conveying and demonstrating their understanding through digital portfolio curation. Using digital portfolios effectively is about getting students to own their learning, to be mindful of what they are learning and of their own learning process. Students can use their digital portfolios to document their personal learning journey, to curate a digital artifact that represents what they really know and what they really can do. Your teacher librarian is a fantastic resource as you plan to share the principles of digital portfolio curation with your own students. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Next up is actually myself, and I would like to share an experience that I had this semester. New technologies delivered new opportunities to our students daily. In co-design lessons with classroom teachers, it is the teacher librarians that can share new insight to technologies that will enhance lessons designed as a team. I worked personally with one teacher creating a lesson on propaganda. We developed a website that curated all resources the students would require. From video clips to VR tours of cities, we were able to showcase a wide variety of materials in different modes. While they were learning about advertising, male and female gaze, and how propaganda has shifted to the digital world, they also learned the skills of how to use these new technologies and how the technologies can benefit their education in the future. Whether through lessons or personal inquiry, students shared their work in a digital gallery and were able to share from each other's projects, what had worked and what didn't. They then used rubrics to grade and learn from their projects and used comment threads to guide a discussion with their peers. These ideas led to a discussion and more inquiry that could be continued beyond our library lesson on the site we built for them. It created a community of learning. The students were able to claim ownership to their education, much like Anthony just said, and showcased what they learned. And our final example for this section, if Yan Zhang would please take the mic.
Thank you, Katie. So when people think of literacy, most people think of words, and they forget that pictures can play a big part of learning. Teaching students how to construct effective visuals such as infographics allows students to collect information and to create visuals that allow for interactive learning to take place. When young creators of media understand that they will be assessed on the message and ideas behind the infographic rather than just the technology, it allows them to concentrate on the content learning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Young. And our final slide about the light model is expertise. Expertise and leadership in the cutting edge. It contributes expertise to enhance teaching and learning through collaborative leadership. Our example for this evening comes from Courtney Andrighetto.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Teacher librarians can make a significant impact on how teachers teach and how students learn. One way teacher librarians can support classroom teachers is sharing models of inquiry and 21st century learning strategies with teachers. I fortunately have been able to start and develop knowledge building centered collaborative websites to share with literacy teachers, as well as share big think strategies and beyond bird units, think models with faculty at my school site. These learning activities support our school's learning philosophy of integrating metacognitive strategies and technology literacy lessons across all content areas. Thank you.
So thank you, students. And so just kind of a quick summary. We hope that all of these 6 items kind of fit into the whole school the whole school agenda, whatever that is. So, for example, if a superintendent is into inquiry or personalized learning or STEM or STEAM, you know, suddenly the hand is raised by the teacher librarian. That's exactly what we could be the center of in our whole Learning Commons thrust. And that what happens is that then people can kind of keep track of what is going on in all of the different kinds of aspects, whether technology is contributing, whether instructional designs are strengthening deep learning, et cetera, those types of things. So we have a research challenge to all the people who are watching this. Many of the research studies that have been done in our field have used large data sets and trying to find correlations between what happens in the learning in the library or Learning Commons and what that does to academic achievement. In this research challenge, we kind of flipped that model because we want to look at actually right down at the classroom level, at individual learners. So it's talk about personalized learning. We're trying to take a snapshot of what is happening, you know, to the individual kid rather than looking at gross numbers or very large data sets. So the research question is, you know, how does, suppose a classroom teacher teaches alone in the classroom, the isolated classroom. And we know that happens in most cases, but what if you combine the expertise of that classroom teacher with a second professional down the hall in the library Learning Commons? What actually starts to happen when there are two professionals working with kids? And what we're really focusing in on is for example, if the teacher has some content knowledge objectives and the teacher librarian joins those with just-in-time process kind of skills that we've been talking about tonight and that are at the bottom of the screen. What happens when you put the skills and the content knowledge together? Do they fit together, and what is the impact? There's a lot of research actually on that one, which is quite positive that there is an actual fit. So in a previous research project that I did a couple of years ago in 12 schools from elementary through high school, we asked 2,200 teachers, you know, when you're teaching alone and you have a set of objectives, you know, what % of your kids actually achieve or exceed your expectations? And the answers hovered around 50%. And then we ask in those 12 schools when the teacher librarian actually partnered with the classroom teacher, you know, what was the result of the number of students that met or exceeded the teacher's expectations? And that went from 70 to 100%. Now, to me, that was absolutely huge because, for example, in a classroom of 30 students, you know, alone the teacher might read 15, but when you got together and merged the classroom and the library Learning Commons and the two professionals, that went up, you know, over 20 to 30 students were actually meeting or exceeding the expectations. So everyone asks, well, how did you measure that? Well, and it's a bit controversial, but I stand by this, that, you know, just trust the two professionals to use the normal kind of evaluation or assessment techniques that they would normally have. So in other words, we were not setting that, because in every state and every school, those are so, and we were not going to try to impose one more expensive test on kids. So just using your own things. First, how many students were in that learning experience, and then you ask how many met or exceeded both adults' expectations. That's important. So when you have two people and they're joining their objectives, what do you get? And so since you're really looking at, in research terms, you're looking at a population, you're looking at 30 individuals in a classroom. So you don't have to do fancy statistics. You can just take incredible to just do a percentage of who either met or exceeded or did not succeed. And that would be the measure that we would try to grab and to get a sense of what actually happened. So, of course, people want to know, well, is it always successful? And the answer, of course, is no. It is not always successful. A couple of examples. In one elementary class, they started off just fine, and then there were all these school interruptions. There were fire drills. There were announcements constantly over the thing. There were snow days or whatever it was, and they finally just, they just gave up because they lost the momentum. You just couldn't regather it. In a high school, you had an English teacher who wanted to take the sophomores who had never done a research paper, and he wanted them to do college-level research papers. And since that was their first time, the bar was just too high. I mean, they had a few successes, but mostly they just did not reach that high of a bar. So there can be problems, but for the most part, there was this huge success. So what are we asking for? We're looking for participants in at least 100 schools across the United States, Canada, and maybe the English-speaking world. So we're interested in people from elementary, middle, and high schools. And we're also interested in the professional credentialed teachers and teacher librarians, so that you have the full two professionals working partnering. And we define that partnering as you plan together, you teach together, and you assess together. So that's kind of that's a high bar to reach, but that puts two adults in the harness at all times during a learning experience, rather than term teaching, which would put you back to the isolated teacher in the isolated classroom. So we want to keep that tandem teaching going. So we would really invite all of our listeners to help with this research project, because we think it might provide some real benefits at the local school level, in addition to what we might learn across 100 or more little mini case studies. In fact, we call it micro-documentation. So if you can help, email me. I'm reader.david@gmail.com, and we'd love to put you on a contacts list and keep you apprised of what's going on. And then maybe you could help in another way by spreading the word and asking various people in schools to participate in this. And then certainly we're doing this in May to give a time for people to kind of plan for these learning experiences in September and October of 2017. We'll accept them after that, but that's kind of our target. And so it would give time to kind of plan and see that this is happening. So what are the final thoughts about all of this? What are we doing when we ask the question, do we really make a difference? We think that it really would make a difference to superintendents and principals to have a lot of stories at their beck and call of successful learning experiences that push their agenda toward the learners in the school. In fact, we encourage a superintendent and a principal to once a month go down into one of these learning experiences and roll up your sleeves and work alongside the students and the teachers and get a sense of what this partnering looks like when it is folded into a great library learning commons. We hope that people who participate will find out how to build a track record of these kinds of experiences, and so that they can document them and put them on their virtual learning commons, which is what I would call the old library website. And certainly, like all good athletic coaches, they conduct a big think after each one of these learning experiences are over. After the game, you videotape the game, and then you watch the video with the players. And that you say, instead of the blame game, you say, what did we do wrong? What did we do right? How can we get better at this the next time we do these sorts of projects? And so these are really, we hope that the research, is a way of teaching both teacher librarians and classroom teachers and superintendents and principals how to really document the impact that the Library Learning Commons is having on teaching and learning in school. So we appreciate so much the participation we've had tonight. You're welcome to conduct questions to me personally at reader.david@gmail.com, and I hope that all of you can participate more and help us with this. We hope it's a giant research project that will be quite informative, I think, to people all across the English-speaking world. So we thank you for participating. Thanks to my great students, and good night, everyone.